The crisp autumn air bit at Eleanor Vance's cheeks as she hurried down the bustling city street, her worn coat doing little to ward off the chill. Her worn leather satchel, a relic from her college days, bumped against her hip, filled with architectural sketches and a half-eaten sandwich. She clutched a steaming cup of discount coffee, its warmth a small comfort against the encroaching cold. Her mind, however, was alight, buzzing with the possibilities of a new design concept for a community center, a project she had poured her heart into, even though her firm had only given her a minuscule fraction of their budget and even less recognition. She was an associate architect, struggling to make ends meet in a city that seemed to thrive on excess, a city where the glass tower she helped design felt miles away from her cramped, rented apartment. Her life was a tapestry woven with threads of ambition, hard work, and an almost stubborn optimism. She didn't come from money, a fact that had always been a quiet undercurrent in her life, a silent explanation for the hand-me-down furniture and the careful budgeting. But she had never let it define her. She believed in merit, in effort, in the inherent dignity of honest work. And then there was Julian Thorne. The thought of him sent a familiar flutter through her chest, a warmth that transcended the autumn chill. He was everything she thought she wanted, everything she thought she needed. He was handsome, charismatic, from a family that, while not obscenely wealthy, certainly moved in circles far above hers. His father owned a successful chain of boutique hotels, and his mother was a well-known figure in local charity events. Julian had swept her off her feet with grand gestures, with promises whispered under starlit skies, with intellectual conversations that stretched late into the night. He saw her passion, her intelligence, her quiet strength, or so she thought. He loved her quick wit, her unwavering moral compass, her ability to find beauty in the mundane. He said her grounded nature was a refreshing change from the superficiality he often encountered in his own social sphere. For 2 years they had built a world together, a sanctuary from the demands of their respective lives. They talked of the future, of a small house with a garden, of shared dreams and quiet evenings. Eleanor had dared to believe in a love that transcended the material, a bond forged in shared values and mutual respect. She had dared to believe that Julian saw her, truly saw the woman beneath the modest attire and the hard-working exterior, and that he valued that woman above all else. But even in their moments of deepest connection, a subtle dissonance sometimes hummed beneath the surface. Julian's comments, initially charming, began to take on a sharper edge. He'd casually mentioned the challenges of her background, the limitations it might impose. He'd suggest, with a gentle squeeze of her hand, that she might want to consider a different career path, one that offered more stability, more opportunity. He'd subtly imply that her efforts, while admirable, were perhaps a little quaint. She dismissed these instances, chalking them up to his well-meaning but sometimes clumsy attempts to guide her, to help her navigate a world he understood better. She told herself he just wanted the best for her, wanted her to be comfortable, to be secure. She loved him, and love, she believed, was blind to such superficialities. Today, however, felt different. A sense of unease had settled over her since Julian's phone call earlier that morning, an insistent request for them to meet, a strained note in his voice she couldn't quite decipher. He was waiting for her at their usual coffee shop, a cozy spot with exposed brick and a scent of roasted beans that usually soothed her. But today the aroma felt cloying, the warmth oppressive. He sat at their favorite corner table, his usually immaculate hair slightly disheveled, his gaze fixed on his untouched latte. When she approached, a forced smile on her lips, he looked up, and the sight of his face sent a jolt of ice through her veins. His eyes, usually sparkling with affection, were clouded with a perplexing mix of pity and discomfort.
"Eleanor," he began, his voice surprisingly formal, the usual affectionate diminutives absent. He gestured for her to sit, and she slid into the seat opposite him, her heart beginning to pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Julian, what's wrong? You sound distant." She tried to inject a lightness into her tone, but it fell flat in the heavy silence that descended between them. He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling visibly. "Eleanor, we need to talk. Seriously." The words, so innocuous on their own, felt like the pronouncement of a terrible fate. She braced herself, clutching her coffee cup as if it were a lifeline. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," he continued, avoiding her gaze, focusing instead on the swirling foam in his latte. "About us, about our future." "And?" she prompted, her voice barely a whisper. A cold dread was spreading through her, a premonition of something shattering about to occur. "Eleanor, you know I love you." The words, meant to be comforting, sounded like a hollow echo, a preamble to an inevitable farewell. "Or, at least, I did. I cared for you deeply." He corrected himself, and the correction was a knife twist. "What are you saying, Julian?" Her voice was steadier than she felt, a testament to years of maintaining composure in difficult situations, a skill honed by navigating a world that often underestimated her. He finally met her eyes, and she saw the pity there, stark and undeniable. "Eleanor, look, we're on different paths, fundamentally different paths. Because of my career, because I'm an architect and not a socialite." A bitter edge crept into her voice, a defense mechanism against the pain that was already beginning to bloom. He winced. "It's not just that. It's everything. Your world, my world. They're just not compatible in the long run. My parents, they're pushing me. They want me to connect with people who can help me, people who understand the demands of my family's business, the expectations. They want me to settle down with someone who can elevate our standing, not someone I have to explain." The word hung in the air, thick with unspoken disdain. Explain. Explain her modest background, her lack of inherited wealth, her fierce independence. Explain her? It was as if she were a complicated equation he couldn't quite solve, a problem to be mitigated rather than a person to be cherished. "So, I'm a liability?" she asked, a tremor finally entering her voice. The words tasted like ash. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "No, not a liability. You're wonderful, Eleanor. You're kind, you're brilliant, you're talented, but you're not what I need. Not anymore. I need a partner who can move seamlessly in my world, who understands the nuances, who has the connections, someone who can help me build the future I envision for myself, for my family's legacy." He paused, as if expecting her to understand, to nod sagely. But all she could feel was a gaping wound opening in her chest. "And I can't do that because I don't have a trust fund? Because I work hard for everything I have?" Her voice was rising now, a raw edge to it. The quiet composure was shattering. "Eleanor, please, don't make this harder than it already is." He looked genuinely distressed, but it was a distress born of his own discomfort, not of her pain. It's practical. It's about reality. Love isn't enough when there are fundamental differences in our stations, in our aspirations. I'm looking for someone who shares my ambitions, my social standing, someone whose family can open doors, not someone I have to introduce carefully. The cruelty of his words, delivered with a veneer of practicality and regret, was devastating. He was divorcing her not for a lack of love, but for a lack of pedigree, for a lack of wealth. He was telling her that her inherent worth, her character, her love meant less than the weight of her bank account. He was telling her that she was not enough because she was poor. The sting of it was far worse than any simple breakup. It was a rejection of her very being, a dismissal of her entire life's journey. "So you're leaving me because I'm poor?" she stated, not as a question, but as a bitter, painful truth. He flinched. "Don't put it like that. It's more complex than that. It's about compatibility, about future prospects, It's about money, Julian. You're too much of a coward to say it." Her voice was dangerously low now, the anger a cold, sharp blade. "You never loved me. You loved the idea of me, the quirky, brilliant girl from the other side, until it became inconvenient for your carefully curated life, until my lack of wealth became a stain on your ambition." He opened his mouth to protest, but she cut him off. "No, don't. There's nothing more to say. You have made your position perfectly clear. I hope you find the woman who can open all the doors for you, Julian. I truly do. And I hope she makes you happy, because I certainly couldn't. Not with my humble origins." She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, drawing a few curious glances from other patrons. She didn't care. Her heart was a raw, bleeding wound, but her spine was rigid. She would not cry here, not in front of him, not for him.
"Eleanor, wait!" he called out, a flicker of genuine regret in his eyes. But it was too little, too late. She walked out of the coffee shop, leaving him and his lukewarm latte behind, the autumn air now feeling even colder, biting deeper than before. The city, once a canvas of possibility, now felt like a vast, indifferent concrete jungle, mirroring the desolation in her soul. She walked for hours, aimlessly, the tears finally coming in a torrent, blurring the vibrant city lights into streaky watercolors. The pain was immense, a physical ache that settled deep in her bones. Julian had not just broken her heart. He had shattered her faith in a fundamental truth, that love could conquer all, that a person's worth was intrinsic, not economic. He had made her feel small, insignificant, a burden. The days that followed were a blur of grief and numbness. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, each object a painful reminder of a life she had shared with Julian. The small framed photo of them laughing on a beach, the worn copy of a book he had recommended, the blanket they used to share on cold evenings, each was a shard of memory piercing her anew. Her friends rallied around her, offering comfort, hot meals, and endless cups of tea. They listened patiently as she recounted the brutal honesty of Julian's words, their own anger a mirror to her simmering resentment. "He's an idiot, Eleanor," her best friend Sarah had declared, her voice laced with fury. "A snobbish, shallow idiot. You're better off without him. He didn't deserve you." Eleanor nodded, but the words felt hollow. Intellectually, she knew Sarah was right. Emotionally, she was still reeling, trying to piece together the fragments of her self-worth. She forced herself to go to work, to immerse herself in her architectural designs, finding a faint solace in the precision and logic of blueprints, a stark contrast to the chaos of her emotions. She poured all her energy into her projects, staying late, taking on extra responsibilities, anything to escape the quiet of her apartment and the echoes of Julian's betrayal. Slowly, painstakingly, a new kind of resolve began to form within her. The pain didn't disappear, but it transmuted into something else, a fierce determination. She would not let Julian's words define her. She would not let his superficiality diminish her. She would prove, not to him, but to herself, that her worth was immeasurable, independent of any external validation or financial status. She started to say yes to new opportunities, even if they seemed daunting. She took an evening class in advanced structural engineering,
pushed herself to present her ideas more forcefully in meetings, and even started a small side hustle designing custom furniture for local boutiques, channeling her creativity into something tangible and lucrative. Her apartment, once a place of shared memories, became a space for her own growth. She rearranged furniture, bought new plants, and filled it with books and art that reflected her evolving interests. She started running in the mornings, feeling the rhythm of her feet on the pavement, the burn in her lungs, a tangible reminder of her strength. Each day she chipped away at the edifice of heartbreak, rebuilding herself brick by painful brick. She learned to embrace her independence, to find joy in small victories, to discover a resilience she hadn't known she possessed. She still thought of Julian sometimes, but the sting was less sharp, replaced by a quiet indignation and a growing sense of liberation. She was free from a love that was conditional, a relationship that had ultimately sought to diminish her. One ordinary Tuesday afternoon, several months after Julian's departure, a letter arrived. It was crisp, formal, bearing the insignia of a prominent law firm she had only ever seen in financial newspapers. She opened it with a sense of mild curiosity, assuming it was a solicitation or a misplaced bill. But the contents made her breath catch in her throat. The letter was from the estate of Bethany Vance, Eleanor's great-aunt, a woman Eleanor barely remembered, a distant relative her parents rarely spoke of, describing her only as eccentric and reclusive. Bethany Vance had lived a life shrouded in mystery, a quiet enigma who had seemingly vanished from the family's radar decades ago. The letter stated in stark, unambiguous legal terms that Eleanor Vance was the sole beneficiary of Aunt Bethany's estate. Eleanor read the words again, her mind struggling to process them. Sole beneficiary. The phrase resonated with an impossible weight. She scoffed, thinking it must be a mistake, a cruel joke. Aunt Bethany, as far as she knew, lived a quiet life somewhere upstate. Perhaps a small cottage, a modest inheritance at best. She called her mother, who was equally stunned. Bethany? But she never married, had no children. She was always so private. What could she possibly have left?
A few days later, a second, more insistent letter arrived, along with a discreet phone call from a senior partner at the law firm, Mr. Alistair Finch. His voice was calm, professional, but held an undeniable gravity. He urged her to come to their offices immediately. The law firm occupied the top floors of one of the city's most iconic skyscrapers, a gleaming monument to wealth and power. As Eleanor stepped out of the elevator, she felt a profound sense of disorientation. The plush carpets, the hushed elegance, the panoramic views of the city below, it was a world she had only observed from afar, a world Julian had coveted, a world she had been told she could never truly belong to. Mr. Finch was an impeccably dressed man in his late 60s, with kind but shrewd eyes. He offered her tea, then, with a sympathetic smile, began to explain. Miss Vance, your great-aunt, Bethany Vance, was an extraordinary woman. Most of her family lost touch with her decades ago, largely due to her highly unconventional path and her desire for privacy. While others pursued traditional careers, Bethany had an uncanny knack for identifying emerging markets, particularly in technology and later renewable energy. She was a pioneer, a visionary, and utterly brilliant. He paused, observing Eleanor's bewildered expression. Over the past 50 years, she quietly built a formidable empire. She invested early in groundbreaking tech startups, acquired vast tracts of land that later became prime real estate, and diversified into a variety of highly profitable ventures. She was meticulous, relentless, and incredibly discreet. She had no other direct heirs, And in her later years, she expressly tasked us with locating you, her grandniece, as the sole recipient of her fortune. Eleanor felt lightheaded. Fortune? Mr. Finch, what are you talking about? He leaned forward, his voice dropping slightly. Miss Vance, your great-aunt Bethany, at the time of her passing, was one of the wealthiest women in the world. Her estate, after all due diligence and valuations, is estimated to be in excess of $5 billion. $5 billion. The words hung in the air, surreal, impossible. Eleanor felt the room spin. 5 billion. It wasn't just money. It was an abstract concept, a number so vast it defied comprehension. It was more money than she could ever spend, more money than she had ever dreamed existed outside of fairy tales. Julian's words echoed in her mind. You're not what I need, someone who can open doors. The irony was a bitter, almost suffocating taste in her mouth. I don't understand, she stammered, her voice thin and reedy. Mr. Finch smiled gently. It's a lot to take in, I know. Your aunt was a remarkable woman. She wanted her legacy, her vision, to be carried forward by someone with a good heart, a sharp mind, and a strong sense of integrity. She meticulously followed your career, your philanthropic efforts, your quiet acts of kindness. She saw in you the qualities she admired most. She believed you would use this wealth wisely, not just for personal gain, but for the betterment of others. The meeting stretched for hours, a bewildering immersion into a world of trusts, assets, portfolios, and legal jargon. She learned that she was now the principal shareholder in a multinational conglomerate with holdings in everything from cutting-edge biotech to sustainable agriculture. She was no longer just Eleanor Vance, aspiring architect. She was Eleanor Vance, heiress, businesswoman, a force to be reckoned with. Leaving the law firm, the city looked different. The glass towers no longer seemed distant. They felt like a part of a new reality she was suddenly thrust into. The weight of the inheritance was immense, a responsibility that both thrilled and terrified. But amidst the shock, a quiet sense of empowerment began to bloom. Julian had left her for being poor. Now she was anything but. Eleanor didn't squander her newfound wealth. She honored Aunt Bethany's legacy with a fierce determination. She spent months immersing herself in the intricacies of the conglomerate, meeting with executives, learning about the various industries, and understanding the markets. She hired a team of advisors, not just financial experts, but also ethical consultants and philanthropic strategists. She refused to be a passive recipient of wealth. She wanted to be an active steward. Her transformation was profound, far beyond the superficial. She retained her core values of integrity and hard work, but they were now amplified by an unprecedented level of influence. She started wearing impeccably tailored suits, not for vanity, but as a form of armor, a statement of authority in boardrooms dominated by men who had underestimated her too long. Her posture straightened, her gaze grew more direct, her voice more resonant with quiet confidence. She learned to negotiate, to lead, to inspire.
She established the Bethany Vance Foundation, dedicating significant portions of her fortune to initiatives that empowered young women in STEM fields, funded sustainable urban development projects, and provided affordable housing for low-income families. She oversaw the creation of innovative architectural projects, not for profit, but for community benefit, bringing to life the very dreams she had sketched in her modest apartment. She became a prominent figure in the philanthropic world, known not just for her wealth, but for her intelligent, compassionate approach to social impact. Eleanor learned to navigate the treacherous waters of high society, attending galas and charity events, networking with politicians, business magnates, and celebrities. She spoke articulately, listened intently, and always maintained a quiet dignity that commanded respect. Her past, her humble beginnings, became a source of strength, a reminder of the real-world impact her decisions could have. She never forgot what it felt like to struggle, to be dismissed, to be judged by her economic status. This memory fueled her drive to create a better, more equitable world. Meanwhile, Julian Thorne's life had taken a decidedly different turn. After leaving Eleanor, he had indeed pursued women of wealth and status. He dated a succession of socialites, each relationship proving more superficial and unsatisfying than the last. These women were often beautiful, well-connected, but also demanding, self-absorbed, and utterly devoid of the genuine warmth and intelligence he had once found so refreshing in Eleanor. He found himself constantly performing, trying to meet their expectations, feeling hollowed out by the relentless pursuit of social advancement. His career, too, began to falter. The connections he so desperately sought didn't materialize into the grand opportunities he envisioned. He made a series of ill-advised investments, guided more by ego than by sound judgment. His family's hotel chain, already facing increasing competition, began to struggle under his increasingly erratic management. His father, a shrewd but traditional businessman, grew frustrated with Julian's lack of focus and his penchant for chasing fleeting trends rather than solidifying their core business. Julian's once charming arrogance curdled into a brittle defensiveness. He became prone to making rash decisions, alienating potential partners, and blaming everyone but himself for his setbacks. His social standing, which he had valued above all else, began to erode. The people who had once courted him now kept a polite distance, sensing the shift in his fortunes. The women he dated quickly saw through his veneer of charm, realizing his promises were empty, his ambition driven by a desperate need for validation rather than genuine vision. His parents, once pushing him towards a suitable marriage, were now worried about the very survival of their family business. They had lost a significant portion of their retirement savings due to one of Julian's disastrous investment schemes. The grand house they had lived in for decades was now mortgaged to the hilt, its upkeep a constant source of stress. Julian, who had once dreamed of expanding the Thorne empire, found himself fighting to keep it from crumbling. He was a man adrift, watching his carefully constructed world unravel, haunted by a vague, undefined sense of regret. He sometimes thought of Eleanor, a fleeting pang of nostalgia for her unwavering support, her quiet strength. But he quickly dismissed it, convincing himself he had made the right choice, that she simply wouldn't have fit into the grand life he still believed was destined for him. He just hadn't found the right wealthy woman yet. The universe, however, had a way of delivering poetic justice. Julian first heard of Eleanor Vance's transformation through a casual conversation at a dwindling networking event. He overheard two men, prominent real estate developers, discussing the phenomenal success of the Bethany Vance Foundation's new affordable housing initiative and the visionary leadership of its chairwoman, Eleanor Vance. The name hit him like a physical blow. Eleanor Vance. Impossible. He must have misheard. There couldn't be two. He scoffed internally. His Eleanor, the one who struggled to pay rent, the one with the worn coat and the discount coffee? No, it had to be someone else. A strange coincidence. But the name kept cropping up. In a business journal, a photograph of a radiant, confident woman dressed in an elegant power suit, addressing a press conference about a multi-million-dollar investment in sustainable tech. The caption read, "Eleanor Vance, CEO of Vance Global and chairwoman of the Bethany Vance Foundation, announces groundbreaking new initiative."
His heart hammered against his ribs. The woman in the photo was undeniably Eleanor, his Eleanor, but transformed. Her eyes held a depth and power she had never seen. Her smile was confident, not timid. She exuded an aura of quiet authority, a gravitas that was utterly captivating. He stared at the glossy page, his mind reeling. Billions, CEO, foundation. This wasn't just a promotion. This was a complete metamorphosis. The woman he had dismissed as poor and unsuitable was now a titan, a force of nature, moving in circles that dwarfed his own faded aspirations. This belief warred with a sickening wave of regret. He felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. $5 billion. The number echoed in his mind, courtesy of an article he furiously Googled, detailing the specifics of Aunt Bethany's estate. He had left her. He had chosen his shallow ambitions over a woman who was now, literally, one of the most powerful and wealthy individuals in the country. The irony was a bitter, choking sensation. He had cast aside pure gold for fool's gold. His immediate reaction was a twisted cocktail of shock, shame, and a burgeoning desperate hope. Hope that perhaps, just perhaps, he could somehow rectify his monumental mistake. He convinced himself that he had merely been confused back then, that he had misunderstood his true feelings. He started rationalizing his past actions, twisting the narrative in his mind until he was the misunderstood hero, not the callous villain. He began his campaign, slowly, subtly at first. He'd accidentally show up at events he knew she might attend, lingering near the entrance hoping for a casual encounter. He'd send carefully crafted emails, ostensibly congratulating her on her successes, laced with veiled references to their shared past, to fond memories. Eleanor, however, was no longer the naive woman she had once known. She saw through his thinly veiled attempts. Each email was met with a polite but firm response from her assistant, thanking him for his kind words, but offering no opening, no invitation. Frustration gnawed at him. His own business was on the brink of collapse. His family home was facing foreclosure. He was desperate. He needed money. He needed connections. He needed Eleanor. His desperation began to overshadow his pride. He started leaving voicemails, his tone shifting from polite admiration to a more plaintive, nostalgic plea. Eleanor, it's Julian. I saw the article about your foundation. Truly amazing work. It got me thinking about us, about how much we shared. I truly miss our conversations. Eleanor listened to these messages with a detached sense of pity. The Julian she had loved was long gone, replaced by a desperate, grasping shadow. She remembered the pain, the humiliation, the explicit reason he had given for their breakup. He had left her for being poor. Now he was back, begging for her attention, for her presence, for her influence. The contrast was stark, a vivid testament to his true character. One evening, at a high-profile charity gala she was co-hosting, Julian managed to corner her. He had somehow secured an invitation through a distant relative, arriving unannounced and determined to make it. Eleanor saw him, across the opulent ballroom, weaving through the glittering crowd, his eyes fixed on her with an almost predatory intensity. She steeled herself. He approached her, a practiced, charming smile plastered on his face, though his eyes betrayed a desperate hunger. Eleanor, you look breathtaking. Truly. This is incredible, what you've built. She offered a polite, cool smile. Julian, thank you for coming. I appreciate your support for the foundation. Her voice was calm, steady, betraying none of the turmoil his presence stirred within her. He winced at her formality. Eleanor, can we talk? Privately. For a moment. He gestured toward a secluded alcove. She hesitated, then nodded. She knew this moment was inevitable. She wanted to face him, to put an end to his persistent attempts. As they moved away from the crowd, the low hum of conversation faded, replaced by the soft strains of a string quartet. Eleanor, he began, his voice dropping, imbued with a manufactured sincerity. I know I made a mistake. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. Leaving you was the biggest regret of my life. I was young, foolish, misguided by— by external pressures. I see now what a truly remarkable woman you are. You've always been brilliant, but now you're a phenomenon. And I realize, looking back, that I was blind. Blind to your true potential, blind to what we had.
You were blind to my lack of a trust fund, Julian, she corrected him, her voice quiet but firm. You were blind to my modest background, which you openly stated was a hindrance to your ambitions. Let's be honest about why you left. He flinched, the manufactured sincerity momentarily cracking. No, Eleanor, it wasn't like that. Not entirely. It was complicated. My parents, they put so much pressure on me. They wanted me to secure the family's future, to marry someone who could complement my position. I was weak, Eleanor. I succumbed to those pressures. And now those pressures are different, aren't they, Julian? She asked, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in her voice. Now that I'm a billionaire, now that I'm the one who can open doors, now that I can complement your position, suddenly I'm suitable? His face flushed. No, it's not about that. It's about realizing what I lost. It's about realizing that you were the one, the true connection, the genuine love. I've been so miserable without you, Eleanor. These past few years, they've been empty. Superficial relationships, professional disappointments. It's all a blur. I've come to understand that wealth means nothing without the right person by your side. And that person, for me, was always you. He took a step closer, his eyes pleading. Please, Eleanor, give me another chance. I've changed. I've grown. I see things differently now. I want to be the man you deserve, the man who truly appreciates you for everything you are and everything you've become. Let me prove it to you. Let me help you with your foundation, with Vance Global. We could be an unstoppable team, Eleanor. Think of what we could accomplish together. The words tumbled out, a desperate torrent of pleas and promises, interwoven with subtle hints of his own professional and financial struggles. He was offering her a future, not out of love, but out of calculated self-interest, hoping to resurrect his own failing life. He saw her as a solution, not a partner. He saw her as a means, not an end. Eleanor listened, her gaze unwavering, her heart surprisingly calm. The pain was gone, replaced by a profound sense of clarity. She saw him not as the man who had once broken her heart, but as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the kind of person she refused to be. She had learned through her own struggles and triumphs that true worth came from within, from integrity, kindness, and resilience, not from the size of one's bank account. Julian, she began, her voice soft but resonating with an undeniable power. I remember that day in the coffee shop, vividly. You told me in no uncertain terms that I wasn't enough for you, that my background was a barrier to your ambitions, that you needed someone with connections, someone who could elevate your social standing. She paused, letting her words sink in. You didn't leave me because I was poor, Julian. You left me because you were small, because your vision for your life was so narrow, so constrained by superficial metrics of wealth and status, that you couldn't see the true value in front of you. You saw a lack of money. I see a lack of character, a lack of conviction, a lack of genuine love. His face paled, the last vestiges of his manufactured charm crumbling. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. This wealth, Julian, it hasn't changed who I am at my core. It has merely amplified what was always there, my drive, my compassion, my integrity. The difference now is that I have the resources to act on those values, and in that process, I've grown. I've become a woman who knows her worth, a woman who understands that true partnership is built on respect, equality, and unconditional love, not on financial expediency.
She took a step back, creating a definitive distance between them. You want another chance? You want to be part of what I've built? You want to help me with my foundation with Vance Global? The truth is, Julian, you are precisely the kind of person I built this empire to protect myself and others from. You represent everything I've fought against. Your values are antithetical to mine. You were seeking to capitalize on a fortune you once scorned, a fortune that only came to me after you deemed me unworthy. Her gaze was firm, unwavering. There is nothing left for you here, Julian. Not a romantic future, not a business partnership, not even a friendship. The woman you knew, the woman you so casually discarded, is gone. And the woman standing before you now has no room in her life for the kind of conditional, self-serving affection you offer. I wish you well, Julian. I truly do. But our paths diverged irrevocably the day you chose wealth over love. And I have found my true path, one paved not with inherited gold, but with self-respect and genuine purpose. She turned, leaving him standing alone in the alcove, his face a mask of shock and utter defeat. The string quartet played a melancholy tune, a fitting soundtrack to his downfall. She walked back into the glittering ballroom, her head held high, a sense of profound liberation washing over her. The burden of his past betrayal was finally lifted, replaced by an exhilarating lightness. She was free. Eleanor continued to thrive, both personally and professionally. Vance Global flourished under her ethical and innovative leadership, becoming a beacon of corporate responsibility. The Bethany Vance Foundation expanded its reach, transforming countless lives and communities. She found genuine love again with a man named David, a brilliant astrophysicist who valued her for her mind, her heart, and her unwavering spirit, utterly unconcerned by her vast wealth. He saw her as Eleanor, the passionate architect, the kind-hearted woman, the intellectual equal, and loved her fiercely for those qualities alone. Their life together was one of shared passions, mutual respect, and quiet joy, a stark contrast to the conditional love Julian had offered. Julian, on the other hand, was left to confront the ruins of his own making. His family's hotel business eventually went bankrupt, forcing them to sell their ancestral home. His attempts to leverage his past connections proved fruitless. His reputation as a man who prioritized wealth over integrity preceded him. He drifted from one failed venture to another, haunted by the specter of what he had lost, by the image of the powerful, radiant woman he had so foolishly cast aside. He had chased fleeting shadows of wealth and status, only to discover in the bitter end that the true treasure had been within his grasp all along, and he had thrown it away for being poor. His life became a lonely testament to the corrosive power of greed and the ultimate emptiness of a love that is conditional on superficial gains. He came back begging, but Eleanor had already built a world where true value reigned supreme, a world where he no longer had a place. If Eleanor's journey from heartbreak to billionaire, from dismissal to undeniable power resonated with you, if it sparked a realization about what truly matters in life and love, then please take a moment to like this video. Your support helps us share more stories of resilience, transformation, and poetic justice. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into complex relationships, class conflicts, and the human spirit's triumph over adversity. And most importantly, share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think Julian truly lost? What did Eleanor gain beyond billions? We'd love to hear your perspective on this powerful narrative.